question, but sort of
Okay.
wonder where you stand on this. I watched the Republican presidential debate last Thursday night on Fox News, and I watched, sort of surprisingly, as 8 people stood up there and said they would turn down a deal that included 10 times spending cuts to 10%, if you will, increase in revenue. In other words, if the Democrats were to agree to $10 trillion in cuts, if they could get $1 trillion in revenue increases, they all said no to that. Not only that, but the Fox News question people, Brett Baer in this case, was shocked. He was shocked by this, that they all stood up there and went like that. Would you be the 9th person on that stage with your hand up high like that?
Well, I know that you said, I didn't see the debate, I have to tell you. I
Did not
was,
see the debate?
no sir, I was actually out in, I believe I was in Volusia County last Thursday, meeting with constituents.
Fine.
And so I didn't see the debate, so I don't know, I know that you say that's what the question was, and I take you for that. I will tell you, I don't believe we have a tax problem right now, we have a spending problem. We do need to reform our tax code. Let me tell you, we do need to reform our tax code. Because we have a lot of these loopholes and all these other things, and they need to be closed.
Thank you.
So I do believe that needs to be done.
What are you
So
doing
would not have
about
been
it?
out there like that. You would
I
say-
believe we do need some tax reforms. Yes, sir. All right, as we move. There we go.
What is your position on the Feed the Future bill? In 2008, I was fortunate enough to be on a group of people, and I wrote the Africa platform for the Democratic National Committee. And what happened is, years ago, since colonialism, a lot of aid was given to Africa, and when I researched this, unfortunately what developed was not enough people in Africa and other developing countries were able to learn how to be farmers. And the Agency for International Development has a program worth to spend $1.4 billion, but the upside is that this $1.4 billion should be able to be enough to train farmers in developing world and in Africa, other undeveloped places, to be able to farm for themselves. In 2008, there were several countries that had food riots. And I thought, well, maybe that could happen in our country. But what I researched was, in our country, there are definitely enough farmers, maybe even more than enough farmers, to grow the food we need. But in Africa, due to the aid, there was a situation where not enough people learned how to farm. It was a dependency on the aid, so well-intentioned aid turned into a lack of farmers. So I think the Agency for International Development now is on the right track, from what I researched, to help solve this problem. But it does cost $1.4 billion. The nation does have a debt crisis, and the money is budgeted right now, but it may be cut by 1/3. But if it is cut by the 1/3, it could lead to food riots in Africa and a possible destabilization of part of the continent.
Do you know the bill number?
There isn't a current bill number. It's just in the budget, but
Do you know what portion of the budget?
Under Agency for International Development. That's who is.
So it hasn't come forward yet
and they've
for
done a good job. They've done a well-researched program where instead of just aid going, which could disappear, you spend the aid this year, you feed people, which is good, and then it doesn't have a long-term impact. This actually has a good long-term impact, and it may help alleviate some possible national security issues in the future and things like that. Of course, Zimbabwe is in crisis. Zimbabwe could possibly alone feed the continent, but you have Robert Mugabe and stuff like that. Liberia is on the rebound. But this is a worthy, program that's in effect right now, fully paid for, but it may be cut. But I'm afraid that in the future, we may possibly want to do, more military actions due to destabilization in Africa or other developing countries, or we, the farmers won't be able to grow the food. There will be more of a food crisis in Africa, which can actually be relieved.
I haven't seen the language. Can you get with us after this with
Sure.
the information? I would like to take a look at that language.
Okay, sure.
Okay?
Thank you.
You're next.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for coming here and exchanging views with us. We've lived here permanently for 5 years. I tried several times to talk to your predecessor. I don't think there was ever an open meeting, just calling on the phones behind screens. So I think most people appreciate that.
Hey,
Concern. Since the downgrade, I'm sorry. Since the downgrade of the credit, I'm not asking you for an answer. I'd just like you to think about this. Since the downgrade of the credit by Standard & Poor's, there have been now 2 independent, suddenly this last week, government investigations of Standard & Poor's. One's the SEC. Today it was the Department of Justice, and a week ago I saw a couple of senators blasting them. It's very unusual that the entity being raided goes around and has some trump card over the raiders like Congress does. And considering some of the deviousness that has gone on in the last few years in Washington, I hope when you go back you'll be very alert to that and see that the first way of solving a problem is to recognize a problem. And if for some reason the administration wants to negate the credit rating, the credit rating bureaus, which they encourage to be tougher on the banks with Frank and Dodd's bill, that's what they complained about, that these agencies weren't tough enough. Now that they get bad news about what they do, I think it's terrible for the American people for a government to deceive the people by slanting the news in that way.
Could I say one thing very quick? I am sure that I disagree with everything this man agrees to, but I agree with him on this.
I might change my view.
Oh. I will tell you that.
This whole business about the S&P, all of a sudden like that getting reviewed.
It was through
This is wrong, I agree with you.
the administration's agencies. It did take place with the administration's agencies. I have heard it, I've read about it also, but I don't believe Congress directed that.
wasn't that ongoing before the downgrade? This investigation was ongoing long before the downgrade.
No, I hadn't heard, there may have been some, but I don't know for sure about the other 2 agencies.
I hate to defend Obama, but
Yeah, I'm
this time
honestly,
you might be right.
I'm honestly saying I don't know. I know that, there are several agencies now, I think, that came out and said they were doing, and I don't know.
Well, this is
And, but I will tell you this,